Charlotte. You are watching The Ugly Atheist. There's a YouTuber that I watch a lot named Tim Pool, and he normally does content surrounding politics and culture, but last week he did a departure from his normal programming, and he did an episode regarding free will. And I was reading through some of the comments, and as you can expect, there is a huge disagreement on whether free will is, do we really have it or don't we? Most of the people who think that we do have free will come to the issue from a religious perspective. And this is understandable, because if free will does not exist, then people can't be fairly held accountable for their actions. And the idea, therefore, of reward in heaven or punishment in hell is a moot issue. And I didn't hear very many people who think that we do have free will approach the issue from any other perspective than religious. And so I felt compelled to make kind of a response video regarding free will. So Tim Pool's take on it is that we can have free will, but we mostly don't, I guess, and it depends on how willing somebody is to break out of the mold that they're sort of formed in. So he thinks that Trump is an example of somebody who's exercising free will, and that he's not conforming to what's expected of him. The deep state is supposedly telling him to govern one way during his presidency, and he would say, nope, I'm going to do it this way. And to Tim's perspective, that is a use of free will. So it seems like he might be confusing free will for non-conformity, and I don't believe that is really free will. Even though you don't conform to something, doesn't mean that you really have free will. I wanted to discuss free will from two different perspectives. From the religious perspective, sort of as a response to the claims of Christians in particular. That's who I came across mostly in the comments section of this particular video. And then from the a physiological perspective, meaning brain function, I'm going to try to steer away from the philosophical perspective, because I am not smart enough to deal with the philosophy of free will. And I'm not smart enough to talk about free will in any capacity, to be honest, but I do have my take on these things, and, take it or leave it. So let's get into it. So let's look at it from a religious perspective, and the religion in particular that is informing this perspective is going to be just Judeo-Christianity, and probably Islam as well. The Abrahamic faiths all sort of believe that God is omniscient, and that he knows everything there is to know, and he exists everywhere in the universe, so he's omnipresent, and he exists for all time, so he's omnitemporal, I guess. I don't know. So the Christians that I saw commenting did not really grasp is that if there is a deity who created all of our lives, he has perfect knowledge of everything that we're going to think, do, and say. He knows how we're going to end up, how our lives are going to end up ending. He knows how all of our thoughts, all the decisions we're going to make. So all of it is already pre-planned. It's already planned out, and he set it into motion. There is no, in that scenario, which is the prescribed scenario by Christians, there is no room for free will, because it's impossible to deviate from what God has already set in motion. In other words, you can't surprise God by by choosing something that like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, and you can't end up in a different place than what God had originally planned. So, and one way to look at it, sort of through an analogy, is that imagine you're the conductor on a train and there's a set track before you, but you don't know where the track is going, and you don't know, you see other tracks deviating off of the track that you're on, and you feel like you could take those at any time. But there is, in fact, one track, one path that you have been predestined to follow. So you have in the religious sense of free will, you have the illusion of free will, but you don't actually have free will. Some of the people who commented on Tim Pool's video were saying that if there's no such thing as free will, then we can't hold anybody accountable for their actions. And that's, of course, ridiculous. We can still hold people accountable. If somebody's a danger to the society, we can still lock them away. And, we can understand that maybe they had no other choice but to act in the way that they did. But that doesn't excuse them in the eyes of the law. We still keep dangerous people away from others and lock them up, and there are still punishments involved, and people do respond to punishments when they are released from jail. Some people go back to a life of crime, but most don't. They get their lives together and they move on. So, and that's all within if you look at it religiously, that's all within God's plan for their life. He knew they were going to make all those decisions, and but this leads me to the second aspect or perspective from which I want to speak about free will, and that is more physiologically and brain function. Scientists who study the brain, we've already I'm not a scientist who studies the brain, but scientists who've studied the brain have figured out already, or discovered and verified, that everything that you are conscious of, your entire conscious thought life, your consciousness, your awareness of yourself, your awareness of the world around you, all of that was started off in your subconscious. So what your brain does ostensibly is it picks up all the sensory data from all of your senses, it compiles it and processes it. After it's processed, after all the data is processed and the unimportant parts are discarded, and the important parts are moved to your conscious. So you are every decision that you make, your brain has already made ahead of time before it reached your consciousness. So, for example, if you were trying to choose between something as simple as 2 flavors of ice cream, and you're thinking, say you have chocolate and strawberry in front of you. I kind of want the chocolate one, so you reach and grab the chocolate. That decision you think is free will, but that decision was already made by your brain before it even reached your conscious, before you were even consciously aware of it. So in that sense, and then your brain makes these decisions apart from your knowing, based on dopamine response, based on upbringing even. There's so many factors that go into how your brain makes decisions. Genetic predispositions, factors that go into processing the sensory data and interpreting it and arriving at a decision, and then moving that decision to your conscious. Moving that information moving that decision to your conscious. And you can try to even, fake out your brain. You can say, I want to get the chocolate, no vanilla, no chocolate, or sorry, strawberry, no chocolate, no strawberry. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to get the strawberry. And then you quickly reach for the chocolate instead. Like, you can, even if you try to fake it out, it's still, that decision had already been made by your subconscious brain. Maybe someday in the future, there will be some means or an experiment where we feed sensory data directly to your conscious brain, bypassing your subconscious. But in the meantime, there's no other way to avoid your subconscious brain processing data and arriving at a decision first before it sends it to your conscious decision making, your consciousness rather. And what would it look like even if scientists were able to experimentally feed data to your consciousness, bypassing your subconscious brain? I don't think that our consciousness has the tools to interpret any of that information. It's, if you can think of it as sort of like a computer monitor, like your consciousness is like a computer monitor that only kind of displays the result of all the hard work and calculations that happen inside the CPU. If you feed unprocessed information directly to your monitor, it's not going to make any sense, and it's going to just be pixelated noise. In both the religious sense and the physiological sense, we don't seem to have free will. But we don't know what it looks like to live our life any differently than as if we do have free will. Just knowing that we do not actually have free will and that it's just an illusion, that does nothing to our quality of life. It doesn't do anything to our behavior. Sure, it's an unsettling thought to think that every decision you make, and we did talk about this in a previous episode regarding dopamine and how much control it has over our decision-making process, and again, that's a subconscious process as well, subconscious mechanism. It's amazing to think that how little control we have over our lives, and I don't quite know what to do with that information. So what now? Like, what do we do? Like, why are people so adamant about free will anyway? If I know why the religious people would be, because if there is no free will, then, as I mentioned earlier, God can't fairly condemn anybody. But seeing as Christianity is a mythology, then you can still continue with your belief in the mythology, and that you can still believe that you have free will, and your life will just go on as normal. But yeah, there's no way that free will is actually a thing. So why do we have this illusion of free will? Why do we have the illusion that we can make decisions? Why do we have this illusion that we are in control of our lives? I think there could possibly be an evolutionary advantage, a survival advantage to feeling that you're in control of your life. I think that feeling that you're in control of your life is empowering, and so on some level, and it helps you to learn and to maintain the lesson that you've learned, and to pass that information on to others. That's probably what your consciousness purpose is for your consciousness, is to have the awareness of your community and to be able to pass along vital information. If that gives you a level of importance, and that is a dopaminergic activity to pass along vital information to your family, tribe, clan, to alert them of danger, and now people are listening to what you're saying, and you have an elevated status momentarily in your group. Or it could be that thinking you have a choice in any matter is just a side effect of how your subconscious and your consciousness communicate. So because your consciousness is not aware of your subconscious, it is completely masked from it, and your subconscious process is hidden from your consciousness. We only recently understood that there is such a thing as your subconscious, and that your brain does all this heavy lifting before it even sends anything to your conscious brain. It could just be a side effect where we feel like we've made a decision on a certain matter, and that decision, we just don't know that it had already been made. So it's just this pervasive illusion, and it's one that we're bound to stick with. There's no amount of knowledge about brain function and no amount of understanding about religious claims is going to change the reality of it, of our lack of actual free will. I guess I will leave it there. Let me know what you think about free will. I'm guessing most of you probably think that it's a real thing, even though it's not. I am Charlotte. You have been watching The Ugly Atheist, and if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment, and I appreciate your time. So I will see you next Sunday.